Thank you, Jesus.
Speak for myself.
Come on.
You are the air that I breathe.
Yes, yes.
You are my everything. See, everybody got to say this for themselves.
That's right.
This ain't a song I can sing to you.
Come
This was one you got to sing for yourself.
Thank you.
Amen. Amen. So often we sing songs and cite, quote scriptures that we don't necessarily believe.
Come on.
And as soon as we hear something that's contrary to what we've been taught, we get to wondering what's what. But you got to know that you know that you know. It's got to be real to you.
It got to be.
It's got to be alive in you. It can't just be some words on a page.
No, sir.
If it's just words on a page, somebody gonna bring you a page with some different words. And then what you gonna do?
That's right.
So often, what Jesus has done for us, we don't take to heart.
Come on now.
We don't take to heart. They were dealing with imperfection in Sunday school. Is that right? And we forget what Jesus did. Sometimes our opinions get in the way. And we'll pin things like we, man, is, church is, pastors are imperfect.
Come on.
And I just like to put a pause on it and say, yes, there are some pastors ain't doing what they're supposed to do.
All right.
But that ain't 100%.
No. Oh, no.
There are some with the label or the title Christian that ain't doing what they supposed to do. But that ain't 100%. God's got a remnant. And they doing exactly what he asked them to do.
There it is.
So there is a remnant that don't fit the category that some folk want to put them in.
Come on.
But, of course, that's not the message, right? Just for a little bit, I just want to share with you, and technology wasn't working, so I thought, well, okay, here we go, Lord.
That's right.
But you probably have in your little handouts my little outline as it was coming to me, and not so much the details of the content of it, but at least kind of an outline. And praise God for these ministers who got up here and spit these words out.
Okay.
These names. Hallelujah. Just going to take a look at it, and just from the thought, a place at the king's table. A place at the king's table. And look at this young man. Look at Saul's grandson, Jonathan's son. And we're not going to go through the whole history of it. I'll leave that to you, but I did put the verses and the chapters where you can find the history. But what you discover about this young man is that before he came along, before anything happened to him, Jonathan had come into a covenant with David. And at the time that he came into the covenant with David, Saul was on David's trail. And Saul was trying to take David out. And so you find that in 1 Samuel, the 20th chapter, that he's trying to take David out. And I just want you to follow the breadcrumbs, if you will, and look at the events that took place in the life of David, but also in the life of Jonathan's son. They make this covenant because Jonathan's dad is after David. And he wants to kill David. He actually tells his son that you ain't for me, you for him. I can tell that right away. And so David and Jonathan had gotten together, and Jonathan told David, or David told Jonathan what he needed to do. He said, there is going to be a feast at the house, but I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to be at the table. Jonathan couldn't believe that his father was trying to kill David.
Okay.
And so David says, this is what's going to happen. I'm not going to be at the table. And he's going to see an empty seat.
Okay.
And if he gets angry, you'll know what I'm saying is the truth. The first day he was absent, Saul asked, where's David? Jonathan said, David had a feast to attend with his people back in Jerusalem.
Okay.
And he asked me if he could go, and I told him yes.
Okay.
The second day, David's missing. And so again, Saul asked, where's David? Now Saul's showing his colors. He's getting angry. And Jonathan realized that his dad is really out to kill David.
That's right.
Jonathan and David had already set up how Jonathan would notify David that what David said is true. And if what he said was true, he would give him a signal, go ahead and get out of town.
Right.
And that happened. Well, they had made this covenant, and we always talk about God being intentional. They had made this covenant. And in this covenant, as they were talking about what was going to occur, what could possibly occur, and what Jonathan was going to do for David, and that he would always be in relationship with David because they were great friends, he then turned to David and says, cut a covenant with me, that when you become king, that you'll have mercy and you'll show kindness towards my family. And so David agreed. Just until, you know how we talk about God knows the whole, and we don't know everything that's going on, but God knows everything. He knows every detail. And so we find that he has a son. He only has one son. And with this, when David becomes king, he's asking, do anybody know if Saul has any offspring around that I might show kindness to? Because they'd already made the covenant with Jonathan that he would do this. And so they said, yes, there is a son in Lodibar. There's a lot said about Lodibar, but Lodibar is a place that nobody really knows where the actual location was. But there is a son. And so David sends for this son, and the son comes to David. And when the son comes to David, or before the son comes to David, let me get the history right. Before the son comes to David, something occurs before that, and you can find it in 2 Samuel, the 4th chapter. And what happened was, at the age of 5, this son was in the house with his nurse. But word came back that Jonathan and Saul had been killed. And so out of fear of what was going to happen to the household, the nurse picks him up and begins to run out of the house with him. But as she's running out of the house with him, she drops him. And he becomes disabled in both of his feet. So he's crippled. And so when he gets to David, when David gets there, he's crippled, and they bring him to David. He's fearful. He bows down to David. And you'll see in the text that he tells David, he says, you know, he actually says something in verse 7 which really strikes me. Actually verse 8 that really strikes me when David is talking to him, and he says, kind of like, for a dead dog, why are you doing this? Think about what he just said. For a dead dog, he's talking to David. Why would you do this? Because David says, I'm going to put a spot at my table as though you're my son, and you're going to be here, and I'm going to give you all the land back that belonged to Saul. So he's getting all the land of his ancestors back, and he's getting a permanent place at the table of the king. And he took the servants and said, I need you men to take care of him. And he had one son. Where I get kind of stuck at sometimes is the fact of the way he's seen himself.
Crippled.
See, so often God has a place at the table for us, but we don't see ourselves as good enough.
Come on now. That's good.
So often God's got things for us to do, but we don't see ourselves as good enough. Why would you choose me? I'm not good enough. Maybe what he was thinking is, I'm in a city, my family is dead, I'm crippled.
See?
What worth do I have?
Come on.
And I searched kind of high and low as to what could it possibly mean when he said a dead dog. What he didn't just stop at dog. He said dead dog. And I thought, that's taking it all the way down.
Yeah. No room.
No worth. He said, how can you take, why would you do this for me and I have no worth?
My Lord.
Think about it. Think about how many people you encounter. Think about how many people that don't accept what you have to give them in terms of Christ Jesus because they don't feel like they're worth it. They don't feel worthy. They don't have any self-worth. And so here we have this young man who has this in his head, but David, knowing the covenant that he had with Jonathan, said, this is your spot at the table. And for a season, he had his spot at the table. But something happens as you read through the text.
Yes.
Something happens. David's son rises up, comes into the kingdom, decides he's going to set up a tent and sleep with the concubine, saying that he's the king now. David, not wanting to kill his own son, didn't return, but those who were on David's side left to go with David. But there were those who wanted to stay in the city with Absalom. While they're in the city, and David is away from the city, Jonathan's son stayed in the city. So it seemed. We were talking about mind poisoning last week, right? We were talking about how people can poison your mind. Follow the text. David has given him a place at the table.
That's right.
He's got his position. He's got the land. This is a young man who, stuff happens to in our life, don't it? I mean, if we live, stuff gonna happen, right? So at the age of 5, this young man is disabled in both feet. He's crippled. Then he's in a place living with somebody. He's in a place of lowly bar, which we don't know where it's at. But he's found. He's sitting at the table. Things are looking better, aren't they? You know how things start looking better for us. Now David is under fire. David leaves. He wants to leave with David. But his servant loads up some donkeys with bread and wine, a string of donkeys. Now, Jonathan's son told him to get a donkey for him so that he could set up on the donkey because he wanted to go to David. But he was bamboozled because his servant got the donkeys, loaded them up, but took the donkeys to David and told David that the one that you gave a place at the table, he want to stay there because he's saying, listen to what he said, he's saying that this is his opportunity, that maybe the kingdom is coming back into his hands. So David, what happens when somebody's mind get poisoned? They turn against you, right?
That's right.
Mind poisoning turns people against you.
It does.
So the position that David had given him, David takes it away from him. And guess who he gives it to? The one who lied. He says, I'm going to take all of the land of Saul from him, and I'm going to give it to you. Because he chose not to come out to me. Some time goes on, and Absalom is killed, of course, and David is mourning the death of his son. And actually some folk was upset with David. They was upset with David because they said, David, you are mourning the loss of your son more than you're excited about getting the kingdom back and us fighting for you. So we got a problem with this.
Okay.
And David said, what do I have to do with this matter?
Okay.
But on his returning back to Jerusalem, he runs into Jonathan's son. And Jonathan's son began to tell him what really happened. He told him that, you know what really happened is I got bamboozled. I was supposed to be on one of them donkeys. He never came back for me.
See?
And then he came out here and told you that I was against you. David said, oh, listen to this. I will restore half of the kingdom back to you.
Okay.
But I'm going to let your servant have the other half. Jonathan's son said, you know what? I don't want anything. I don't want any land. I don't want anything. He said, it's just good to know that you're alive. It's just good to know that you're getting ready to sit back up on the throne.
Yeah.
He said, that is enough for me. Think about it. Crippled at 5, lied, stripped of what he had received. Now this young man did not bathe, wash his clothes, cut his hair, or anything while David was off the throne. It wasn't until David got back on the throne that he began to wash his clothes again and to cut his hair and to groom himself. So why am I telling this story? One, we see in it that mind poisoning is big.
Yes.
It was taking place in the Bible.
Yes.
It's still taking place today. Number two is we want to see what is the attitude of this young man once he got himself restored.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was his attitude? How was he? How's your attitude when things don't go your way? What's your attitude like when somebody lie on you?
Yeah.
What's your attitude like when things go wrong in your family?
Right.
How do you feel about yourself based off of what you know has occurred in your family that has happened to you? What's your mindset like? How are you functioning? Can you really take your seat at the king's table?
See?
Where am I at with this? When you come to church, when you say you believe in Jesus,
All right.
have you really taken your rightful position at the king's table?
See? Come on.
Or are you still flipping and flopping with what happened to you before you met the king?
Wow. See?
Are you still viewing yourself as not worthy? Do you still see yourself as, I have little self-worth?
Yeah.
Do you still see yourself as, oh, that could never happen for me?
Right. Right.
When the king has said, I have put a spot here for you. I have given you my spirit.
Yeah.
I have caused you to be my son.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
For one died for you,
Oh, yeah.
that you might have this spot.
Wow.
Are we still operating with an embittered attitude? Are we still enraged?
Wow.
Am I still mad at mommy? Am I still mad at daddy? Am I still mad at auntie?
Right. Right. Right.
Cousin Joe?
Yeah.
Oh,
Come on.
I shouldn't have said Cousin Joe.
Come on now.
Am I still angry and embittered? Do I still have trouble facing them and talking to them
Come on.
when I'm a part of royalty now?
Right.
Think about it just for a second. Not a part of royalty to boast and be proud in, but a part of royalty to be humbled in.
Yes.
To be able to look back and say, after all of that, God had made a covenant with somebody
Come on.
on my behalf. See, what we don't understand is that God and his son Jesus came into an agreement that there were some people that he wanted to get to.
Yes, sir.
And that he wanted preserved. He wanted his father to show some kindness to.
Yeah.
So he's like, Dad, if you will you tell me, will you promise me that you will show them some kindness?
Come on.
And Daddy said, I will show them some kindness if I can get a perfect
Yeah.
sacrifice.